All right, everybody. We are back with another episode of Inside the Big Ring, and we are talking about Unbound. That's right. Happened last weekend, happened on Saturday. It was my first big race of the year. It was my first A race of the year. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that I talk about it all the time. I was talking about my training for it, and it happened. It It finally happened, and it's amazing. Like I'm sure anybody who has done a big race is you go through these stages of, nah, I got all the time in the world. Uh, yeah, it's getting a little closer. Got to start increasing the training a little bit, and then all of a sudden you're in it. Okay, I'm fully in this training, and then all of a sudden you go through the panic mode of, holy crap, this is 3 weeks out. I haven't trained at all. What have I been doing? I've been wasting my time. I'm so unfit. The whole winter was wasted. All of the emotions. And then the 2 weeks before, I'm thinking, I need one more big ride. I need one more. That's gonna make or break my race. Thankfully, I didn't do that. I chose the freshness route. Um, and then race week, I'm just like fully excited, super excited. But I'm gonna give the details off of the whole day in an entirety, just so you get the data aspect of it. So my finish time, so it's 200 miles, 202 miles, and it's on gravel. Pretty much all of it's on gravel. There was like one section where you're on a road. It was pretty nice, but pretty short. And my total finish time was like a little over 14 hours. Don't know the exact finish time, but a little over. My ride time, I was pedaling for 13 hours and 24 minutes. So, you know, 38 minutes maybe. It's more than 35, but 38 minutes of stop time between getting off my bike and whatnot. So, 24 hours of actual ride time. My TSS was 626 TSS points. Just to give you a reference point, a full Ironman, your TSS is like 250 to 300. So it was more than double, doing two Ironman bike rides, plus a little bit more. My percentage of FTP for the whole ride was 68%. My normalized power was 198 watts. My kilojoules was 7,617. And when I was watching the Keegan episode after, him and Alexi said that they were, I think they're like around 9,000 kilojoules, and it took them like what, 8.5 hours, 9 hours. So that's a lot of kilojoules. So again, a reference point, for if I do an Ironman, my kilojoule expenditure is like 3,500 to 3,800 kilojoules, and this was 7,600. The total feet I climbed was 10,000 feet, 420. So a lot of climbing. And I knew I knew all of that going in. Like I had a very good reference point that the TSS and the percentage of FTP and the kilojoules and the elevation gain, I had a very good idea. Like those were the metrics going in, and you're preparing for them like you really are. And you try to replicate some of that, like within training. I mean, I did not do a 202-mile ride leading into that. But when I look at, you want to do big rides that are somewhat close, and that accumulation of training, builds you up and builds the durability that allows you to handle 202 miles. A lot of times too, you're looking at the week, and you're looking at, okay, this is the demand of that event. And in training for the entire week, I'm going to accumulate over 7,000 kilojoules, maybe 8,000, 9,000 kilojoules within the week. I'm going to average my bike TSS over 600 TSS points for an entire week on the bike, right? To accumulate that kind of workload as well. Because, again, you can't do it all in one day, and nor do you need to. But those are the metrics going into it. The training going in, because again, like a couple weeks before, I just had convinced myself that I was so unfit and I hadn't trained and I didn't do any intensity. And it's amazing how stress, uh, affects you. It makes you convince yourself that you were just, like that's what stress does. It just makes you not want to do things. It wants to protect you. And those insecure thoughts were trying to make me not do the event. Man, I should have just done the 100 miler. But I had done a lot of 130 mile rides. I did uh, 2 or 3 rides in Blue Mounds, which is a very hilly area. And, that one of those I climbed, over 10,000 feet, which was super confidence boosting. And another one that wasn't as long, but it was pretty intense. But had many, many hours over many weeks, over 10 hours per week. Had quite a few, actually, over 15 hours per week of biking. And of course, that includes, an 8 hour long ride, right? So a lot of miles within that. And I found myself going through this training cycle of 1 week would be really big, like a really big bike week, a 15, 16, 17 hour training week on the bike. And then the next week would actually be like a pretty easy week where I would reduce intensity, reduce volume, and let my body absorb that. And so I'd give myself like these really big hits because that's what Unbound is. It's a really big hit. And I wanted my body to take that on. And then, but I couldn't do that week after week after week, where I went in these cycles of, if earlier in the winter, I would just do a lot of accumulation of 10 to 12 hour bike weeks, doing various intensities. But then once it was nice enough to go outside, I would go through these on-off weeks where, again, really huge week, huge intensity. It was like a block, right? Like block scheduling is very, very effective, but it's only effective if you absorb it, after it. And I knew that was working. Like I really felt my body absorbing that aerobic training well. And if you remember, like many podcasts ago, I said, from now on, I'm just going to be doing a lot of aerobic work that fills out the engine, really fills out my engine. And that worked. Like that worked really, really well. And within that block, I did my best ever 20-minute power where I did a 322 watt 20-minute. And it wasn't like within a test. I think I was like just in a mode and I felt super great. I said, I'm going to freaking rip it here. And I knew I was on one. So I just like let it go. Like I just felt like I was going to have a good effort in there. And I was like, wow, this is my best ever 20-minute power. So that workload really elevated the aerobic side of my training because before that I had done so much VO2 max work. And then there's like, like eight to 10 weeks of just like really, really great, again, zone 2 tempo, sweet spot, threshold work, and just like really doing a lot of that. And I think that took 3, 4, 5 weeks for it to really absorb. And then I felt super fit. So training wise, it went really, really great into it. And I was still swimming and biking, as you know. Expectations for the race. I was not expecting, to podium or anything. Like I'm not that good of a cyclist, right? I'm fine. Like I can ride, but I didn't go into it thinking I want this time goal. I want to try to be in the podium I signed up for Unbound 200 as an experience. I signed up for it to really challenge myself, and I didn't want to ruin it by creating these expectation and goals that I didn't know. I had no idea what it took, and it just was unrealistic. And kind of going into it with that mindset really allowed me to be free. I was not nervous at all for this race because I knew that what was I looking for, what were my goals, what was I trying to do, and it was very process oriented. Everything I wanted was within my control, outside of flats and such like that. And it's amazing how low stress you can be when you're in that place. And all week at the expo, pre-riding, I was having an amazing time. I just wasn't thinking about anything outside of this is what I want, this is my experience, this is my challenge coming up. And it was awesome. Like it was so fun to walk around the expo and talk to people, and and meet up with my other athletes and just have like a really fun time and not be overthinking the goals of what I want to do. Um, so that was it. And I just wanted to ride my ride. And when I was talking to a couple of my athletes that are much better cyclists than me, like, are we gonna ride this thing? Are we gonna start together? And for me, I'm like, no, like I'm not. Like I'm doing my thing, and I'm gonna live within my world out there, and that was helpful. The morning of the race, I woke up and I was like, wow, I'm nervous, and I remember kind of like going outside and just thinking, Steve, like, chill out, man. Like, just chill. Like, you're fine. Like, and I mean, but like, that's pre-race nerves. Like, you have a huge day ahead of you. And so, yeah, that was what it was. But then you get to the race site and you're like, wow, this is amazing. The energy at the start line was huge. And, the expo of the race, I mean, there's probably 200 vendors there. It was the biggest expo I've ever seen. And you're walking around and you're seeing all these top pros and you're seeing all like these brands and you're talking to people. And yeah, it was just like a really great experience, and it was super, super awesome. And the excitement on the morning of was amazing. So you get there and you line up and and you know you you're just like in these, you're like they're corralled where you said, hey, are you going to finish in 9 hours or 10 hours, and you corral yourself. And I corralled myself where I appropriately thought, and the race started and it was rolling. So you know, a couple of things, 2 days before the race, I was still running. I was running that week. I'd swam Monday and Wednesday, of that week. I was running. I ran with Daniel on Thursday. We went out for some miles, and I just wanted to keep things normal. Like, I didn't want to like overthink it. I didn't want to, because again, I was there for something just for myself. Yeah. Okay. So race starts. Let's get into the race start. So the race starts, and from again, like you're saying, it's a neutral rollout, but it's almost like within 5 seconds, it felt like we were flying, and I'm like, whoa, we're going, and and I was like, just ride your ride, like don't get caught up in this madness of like you have to go fast here, right? Just like do your thing, because I felt like if I would have went with anybody, I would have been like, man, I would have been well at my threshold 2 minutes into this ride, and I just said again, just do your thing. Just do your thing. And the earlier 5, 10, 15 miles were the easiest sections. Um, it was like riding on a road. The gravel roads were very much what we have here in Madison, where you're just flying and you're going so fast off of such easy watts, and you're kind of like jockeying for position, but nobody was really aggressive, which I thought was pretty nice. You're just riding, and you're riding really fast, and there was no elevation. So I mean, the opening part, I mean, we were averaging well over 20 miles an hour. And there are many times when groups would come through, and I was like, I can go quicker, I can go with that group. And I said, no, like just sit in this group, like you're fine, just sit right here and just chill out, right? And you're 10 minutes in and you're already thinking, go faster, go faster. Like, no, Steve, just chill. And so yeah, so much of it, the earlier part was just containing myself and just thinking, you have all day, right? You have all day. Like, this pace will chill out, it'll settle down, and it did. And then some of the nervous sections that I have were like the hard descents that were coming up, because there were very key sections, in Lifetime or whoever did this did a great job of letting you know, hey, you are entering this section, and it always had a name, and it's either a hill, a select hill that you know of, or it's a very rocky downhill. And you enter this and it says, hey, rocky. And so a lot of times you'd be on a gravel road, like a legitimate road that was all gravel. And then you would turn into a forest road, and there were no lines. Like, it's just like a weird road. And my first taste of this was at the Bear, a month or so ago, where you all of a sudden you get on these, and you're just finding lines that aren't there, but you're also in a group, because there were still 100 of us all together, and so you're trying to be aware of the people behind you. You're trying not to crash people, and then you go down this first rocky section, and you're like, holy crap, like, this is crazy. And it just felt like going down that rock garden, and it brought me back to the memories of the Bear, of that rock garden that I got dropped on, and you're trying to ride that because you have to ride your pace downhill. Because if you go with the person in front of you that's outside your comfort zone, you're going to crash. You will crash. And so, people were great. Nobody was yelling. And granted, I wasn't like, slowing the group down, but it was pretty awesome. But yeah, like the rocky downhills were something that I was very nervous about. But again, like it's within your control, and I did my thing. And the thing is like it wasn't very muddy for us. But the key mud sections that it was muddy is you would go down these hills and you'd go pretty fast, and then all of a sudden, because you can't see 10 to 20 yards in front of you, you just all of a sudden have this muddy section appear, and it's either a straight section, like a flat section, or you go into like these off camber full muddy sections. And if you don't take the right line, you're going to slip out, like you're going to crash. And every single one of those downhill sections, there was somebody laying off the side of the grass, bottles everywhere. And that is like the sign of like if you take that too fast and you crash, like your day's done. I mean, there were people on the side of the road with, you know, busted wheels, and I mean they were walking their bikes the opposite way, which just meant that their day was done. Um, yeah, and then you get onto more open gravel roads and you're flying again, and then you're back into a group and you're just drafting your way through because the speed is back to 18, 19, 20 miles an hour. Um, and I remember we were on this gravel road again, just flying, and just it was such an amazing, amazing view. Like the views in Emporia were amazing. And I remember it distinctly, like we're flying through this section, and I was third or fourth wheel, and then all of a sudden it was like bang, 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 like potholes, right? And I hit one really hard, and I was like, okay, like I'm good. But then all of a sudden, like my front wheel just got really squirmy. I was like, I looked down, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a flat tire. And I've never had a flat tire on a tubeless yet, never. And I'm like, this was my worst nightmare. I have a flat tire. I've never changed this before. Is my race over? I was freaking out internally. And one, like my front wheel, because you're going 20 miles an hour, to all of a sudden your front tire flat. And I'm like, I stop and I kind of, have like a little wobble because my tire's flat. I'm trying to steer it off to the side, and I get off of it and I walk it up a small hill to get to a section where I could like kind of put my bike next to something. And I'm like looking for like the flat. I'm looking for where my sealant is kind of coming out of my tire, and I couldn't find it. And then I look at the rim, and the rim had sealant. I was like, this is weird. And so I pull out. I was like, well, I can't. I don't have to. I don't have to. I'm blanking on the word, but I don't have to put. I don't have to put anything in my tire. And so plug it. I didn't have to plug anything. I was like, well, this is good because there's nothing coming out. And so I just fire a CO2 in there, and I put it up pretty freaking high because I could take air out. And I waited. I was like, we're good. Like, we're good. And so, of course, I released pressure back to where I thought I would have it. And it held. I was pretty nervous after that, but it held. So that was cool. But that was like, and I think I just burped the tire. I just think with the speed and the way that it hit that pothole, that it just kind of like, it like fires air out of the tire very, very quickly. But that was good, and that was my only mechanical issue for the day. And that took me probably, I don't know, 3 to 4 minutes to get up the hill, put the bike up, and then get the CO2 in. So it didn't like take me a lot of time, and that could have been a lot worse. So yeah, but after that, like you're just going in between valley roads and gravel roads and going back and forth, and the hills were steep. The hills that you were riding on the forest roads were just really, really steep. And you're always in the small skier, like you're just climbing up it. And you have to be careful because, again, like it just is the reminder that sometimes people ride these hills way harder than what I wanted to. And every time I look down, I'd see 100%, 105%, 110% of my FTP. And I'm like, man, dude, Steve, you got to relax. Like you cannot ride this hard an hour to an hour and a half into this ride. Like you can't, because it's just constant, like an over under. And you're either riding steady or you're hitting these forest road hills, and you're punching VO2 max. And I'm like, you really have to contain yourself or you're going to blow. Um, and so, yeah. So then finally, we got to the first checkpoint, and that was mile 70. And a checkpoint is essentially where you have people waiting for you, or you could hire like a special needs. And so Michael, one of my athletes, and Daniel, they said, yeah, they're at the race and said, yep, we'll take your coolers. We'll go out there. And so we roll in, and you have your cooler, you have fresh bottles, you have fresh water with the drink mix already in there, which was cool because you have some social interaction with people that and that was like a goal of mine. That was a I want, like, get me to Daniel and Michael, right? Like, get me to those people, and those were goals. Get me to 70 miles, get me to 140 miles. Um, but seeing them at 70, I got there and I was like, I feel awesome, and this is the coolest thing ever. I was geeking out at, I was like, this is amazing. I refilled the pack. I refilled everything. So, my nutrition plan is I had a 3 liter pack, and I had 2 bottles of 24 ounces on each. And then on my bento box, I had 3 packages of like chews, all different flavors of chews. And one of them were always caffeinated, the other ones were not. So per hour, I was probably taking in 50 to 60 to 70 milligrams of sodium, 3 liters, and then 2 bottles, 2 bottles and everything had raw nutrition. So every hour, I was taking in 300 calories of raw, and mostly orange, plus I don't know, probably the 150 to 200 calories of the chews. So I was taking in 400 to 500 calories an hour. And sodium was about 1,400 milligrams of sodium per hour, just because I sweat a lot. And that worked great. So I would basically have like a gallon of water pre-made with raw, right, cold, and I had bottles, and I just basically open my pack up. I would pour the gallon into my pack, and then I would go. So I went 70 miles feeling great. And then, which is so funny because you come out of the special needs, and I went from feeling awesome and so pumped and ready to crush the next section, to the 140-mile next checkpoint. And it's almost like a light switch went off in my body. And I went from feeling great and excited to thinking I'm screwed. Like, my body and my legs and my hamstrings are done. And I don't know what happened. To this moment, I don't even know. And I thought, did I override? Am I bonking? Like, is my race totally done? And like, my hamstrings were feeling crampy. Um, I didn't know. And so for the next probably 2 hours, I was in a hole. I I believed that I was not going to finish this, because I went from riding, 200 watts, 220 watts, right? Just like a good zone 2 effort, to I can barely push 150 watts without my hamstrings feeling like they're going to cramp. And I have, I have 120 miles to go. I can't finish. Like, there's no way I can physically make it through this much more. And so off and on, I would stop, get off my bike, and I just feel like I had to stretch my legs out. I'd coast and stand up and let my hamstrings stretch out. Like 2 hours. Like, I already had my DNF speech ready. Like, I was ready, and I was like, man, I'm a failure. Holy crap. Like, I don't even know what's going on. And I remember this moment. Like, I just climbed this hill, and I'm barely making up it. I'm probably near tears because I was just so demoralized and self-defeated. And I was like, I trained for all this, and I couldn't even make it 80 miles. Like, this never even happened to me in training. And I just laid by my bike, not laid by my bike. I had my bike up, and I was sitting there, and I was thinking, I need to do something. Like, something has to change. Like, I don't know what is going on. And I just thought, maybe you should raise your saddle. Like, maybe your legs just need more extension, Steve. Maybe that's what's going on. And I don't know why I thought that, because I hadn't messed with my bike, and I was thinking, my bike's been fine. I don't know what's wrong. Like, my bike, I never have dealt with this ever. And I just took out my Allen wrench, and I raised it up. I don't know, like 5 mils, nothing. Just raised it up a little bit. And got back on my bike. I was like, oh, this is different. I feel more extension. And then within 10 minutes, I felt fine. My hamstrings were fine. And my legs were never tired. It was my hamstrings. Like, oh, Steve's back. I'm great. And so from 70 miles basically to 90 miles, I was ready to quit. And then 90 miles to 140, I was like, boom, we're crushing. We're ready to go. And I don't know if it was mental or if I really need to raise my set. I don't know what it was, but I never had felt the hamstring thing again the whole race. So 90 to 140, I'm back. I'm crushing. I'm flying through this. I'm rolling. Back 200 watts, 220 watts again. I was having a great ride. And then I get to checkpoint 140. I'm like, here I am, guys. I'm back. I'm feeling great. The first thing I think Michael said, he says, "Are you okay? You feeling good?" I'm like, oh, he knew I was struggling. He knew. If anybody ever asks you, "Are you okay?" at during a race, that basically means that you're not doing very well, or something visually was wrong. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But I was good, like emotionally, energy wise. I was so on top of the world at 140, and so refill another gallon, refill the bottles, refill the chews, and I'm off again. And so at that point, right, because the time before it was just like it was probably, I think it was the hardest section of constant rollers. We had a really big headwind for that section. And then I knew after 140, the direction we were turning was a tailwind, still hilly, of course, but we had a tailwind. I'm like, I'm going to kill it. Like, I'm going to crush this final section. And, we have 60 miles to go, 62 miles to go. And in my head, I was like, I have a 70.3 bike to go. I'm going to send it. I just feel so good. And I start rolling again. And I said, hey guys, I appreciate you being here. This is amazing. Thanks so much. And hoping, and I was asking triathlon questions because T100 was going on, and I was like, what's going on with the racing? And I was just, not whatever. And so it was great to have those guys there. I really think that they saved my day on a lot of levels, and yeah, can't thank them enough for being out there. And so I start rolling, and I'm pushing again, keeping 200 watts, pretty steady, feeling great. Energy's awesome, and passing people just because, I just felt like my training was on point, and I felt like everything was going great. And then, yeah, then at some point, my low back just stopped working, and I was like, shit, this sucks, and it wasn't like my SI joint, wasn't like my piriformis. It just was like my low back, like the whole low back. And I was like, man, is it? And I'm just trying to, try to problem solve. I'm like, is it my hydration pack? Is it just the weight of the hydration pack after all these hours of it being on me? I didn't know, but I'm thinking this isn't good. Like it felt bad. And so I would stop. I would do some stretching. I would, coast and, do some cat cows to sort of try to stretch out my back. And then, yeah, like that was the killer of my race. And at that point, like I couldn't overcome that. My low back just got really, really tight. And there were times when it was fine. There was times where it was like really, really painful, and I was going through these on and off sections. And I remember getting, I just remember getting to like this tent, and it was a little bit of a road section. I got to this tent, and you could see this massive hill. In my head, I'm like, I hope we're not going up this hill. It was so freaking steep. And and um and there's this tent, and all the athletes were stopping there, and they were serving pickles and pickle juice, and like, you good? Like, and like, you want me to refill your water? I'm like, just if you could like just put some water here, that'd be great. And then I think it was this lady comes up to me and she says, "Do you see that hill?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You got to climb that hill, and then you got to climb another one just like that. And then after that, you just got some rollers." I'm like, and then it's flat. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, that is not what I wanted to hear. Like that is not what I wanted to hear. And so you're just climbing, and yeah, I was like, okay, this is it. And so, but still, all I had at that point was like 150 watts, and I didn't feel like I was bonking. I didn't feel like, I think for me it was just, my low back was just killing me. And yeah, that was tough. And there were times where I was thinking, and every hour I would lap my Garmin. So I would see just every hour. So I got to an hour, I'd lap it. I could see an hour, I'd lap it. Because I didn't want to see 5, 6, 8, 9 hours. I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see my distance. So the only thing on my Garmin that I was looking at was the map, the lap time, and my percentage of FTP. There's only three things that I saw. And so at some point, I would flip back and I'd see, where am I in my distance, right? How much more do I have to go? And I go back to my map, go back to my distance. And at some point I said, this freaking distance thing must be broken, because I feel like I'm not moving. Like I keep seeing, like and so finally I just stopped looking at it. And at some point I finally knew I got to the final flat section, because I was going through this town. I was like, this has to be Emporia. I take out my phone and I looked. I was like, oh shit, this isn't Emporia. I still got some time to go. And I think I realized at some point, I was like, man, I still have like an hour and a half to go. Holy crap! Like, when is this race just gonna end? And and I remember, like, there were key things I was thinking out there. One, I was like, you're not gonna ever DNF. Like, you will never DNF. Because I thought to myself, what happens if I go home? Well, what happens when I go home and my daughter's like, hey, like, how come you quit? Like, what happened? And if my excuse is, well, I just got tired, I mean, it like just makes you feel pretty soft. Well, I just quit because I got tired. I was like, so for me, it's like, you have to finish, because you finish what you start. Like, you go out there and you finish it no matter what. Um, Another part of it was, I went after this because it was a challenge. And sure, I wasn't having the greatest day ever, but you're doing 200 freaking miles, right? I mean, it's just like one of those things where it's a challenge. That's what you want. That's what you train for. And even in the race, keep your perspective as what you wanted it. Don't create this bullshit in your head where you're like, well, I wanted this. Like, no, you wanted to finish. You wanted an experience. Just keep it going. Um, and so I just thought to myself, just keep rolling. Just pedal your bike. Just pedal. Who cares? And I remember too, I like my soundtracks kept changing, and I remember at some point too, I changed my, for 2 hours, I just listened to Hamilton, just because I wanted something different. And for 2 hours, I just listened to the whole entire Hamilton soundtrack. And then finally, when I knew I had like an hour to go, I said, I'm done listening to music. I'm going to turn on a podcast. And so I just turned on a podcast, and I was listening to a Mark Allen podcast, and like these things that would just distract me and just enjoy it. And I knew I was getting closer. So at some point, I knew I found, I was like, oh, because I had pre-written some of the course, and I got to this section and I was on a road. It's like, I remember this road. I'm close. Like, I'm really close. And that kind of lit me up. And it was still like, I could see the moon kind of coming. I was like, man, gosh, this is crazy. And I get to like the base of the final hill, and this guy starts yelling at me. And at first I thought it was like Michael or Daniel. I was like, oh. And like, you're gonna finish before sundown. And in my head, I'm like, well, I don't really care about that. I just want to finish. But he keeps repeating it, like super pumped. He's like, dude, you're gonna finish before sundown, man. Like, you got less than a mile to go. And at some point, I was like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna finish before sundown. And so I just started like sending it. And I don't even know why I was doing that. I was like, well, this is a cool goal. I'm gonna do this. And so I get up that hill, and like, wow, I got some energy now. And I turn and I'm like, there's the finish line, and it was cool. Like, it was super cool to finish. And yeah, like, it was awesome. So, and I remember too, this was special to me. I don't know, and so when I was working at CTS like 10 years ago, uh, one of the guys who founded this race, Leland, was the camp director for CTS. So I saw him a lot. We did Ironman camps, we did climbing camps, we did spring camps, and Leland would be at these camps. So just making sure everything was good, and super awesome dude, like, one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And I remember him leaving and moving back to where he lived, Kansas, and And then I realized that he was a part of this race called Dirty Kansas, which is now Unbound, and basically one of the founders of this race. And I remember I wanted to see him all week, but I just wasn't gonna reach out. Dude's busy. And he's at the finish line, and I remember walking up to him, and he saw me, and he walked up to me. He's like, "Dude, I saw your name on the stars. I was so pumped that you did it." And it was cool to reconnect with him because I haven't seen him in forever, and I thought he was just like the awesomest, the coolest guy, and so it was cool to share a moment with him, and I just like, man, you have an amazing event. Like, this is one of the coolest races I've ever done. And I just was thanking him. I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, you got something really special here. And he was handing out medals and just being awesome. So that was cool. I have written down here, like one of my biggest takeaways from the race is one, it's an amazing race and one of the coolest experiences. From the expo to the check-in to the pre-race to everything. And I'm a triathlete, and I wanted to do this, and I felt very prepared. I don't have a mountain biking background, but I felt like I'm gonna be back. Like, I thought that the whole thing for me was I want to do this again. Absolutely. I want to come back, take this thing on, and just do things a little bit differently. One of the biggest mistakes that I felt like I made looking back is I didn't prioritize enough hills. I was thinking so much on the distance of it. If I were to do this again, I wouldn't overthink doing like long, long bike rides. I would go to Blue Mountains or the most hilliest routes that I have, and I would hit the hills all day, hill after hill after hill after hill. Because I think that some of my low back issue was just like when you're climbing these steep 4, 5, 6, 8% climbs over and over and over, it's just really physical. And I think over time my low back just wasn't strong enough to support all of that climbing. And so I think that was my biggest regret, or just a thing that I would do differently. Um, if I wanted to go quicker, I would want to do more work descending rocky stuff. So if that means mountain biking, but just being comfortable carrying speed, over downhills like that. But I feel like my fitness was really good. I feel like fitness wise, I was super, super fit. And unfortunately, 14 hours, like I felt like I could have went like 12, maybe a little over 12 hours. And so I feel like my fitness was ready for that. I just think things that popped up didn't let me show that, but I don't really care. I mean, I got that thing done and I'm super proud of it. The next morning on Sunday, I woke up and I thought to myself, okay, how sore am I going to be? I started walking and I was like, I don't feel sore at all. Like, my legs felt totally fine. And maybe that's because I spent the last 3 hours pedaling 150 watts. I don't know. But I felt like my fitness was really, really great for the event. Nutrition plan, I thought worked perfectly. I had minimal GI discomfort. My focus was great all day. I didn't really feel like I bonked ever. I just felt like so much of my issues were other things that I could have controlled. So, and the final thing was, using Unbound as a separation of the season, really doing so much of a bike block into this, really allowed me not to overthink Ironman Chattanooga in September. And I think now, like, I got to Monday and I said, I am so motivated and so ready for Chattanooga training. The process of getting into peak Ironman shape now is like at an all-time high. And I was worried that I would finish Unbound and be emotionally smoked. But if anything, the event just like ignited this new level of excitement and energy and feeling like I want to be so much better. I want to be like next level cycling into Chattanooga. Well, and bike and run, swim and run as well. But I think like having an early season huge A race that was not a triathlon was perfect. I really think that worked out well for me. And I can see that progressing into next year as well. So that's it. I mean, that's my Unbound story. And again, I'm really excited about it. I'm not disappointed at all. I'm super proud of myself for putting it out there, doing something huge. I had 7 athletes out there, and all of them triathletes, every single one of them triathletes. And I have a lot of athletes this year doing events that are not triathlons. And I think it's amazing. I think venturing into a sport that is not triathlon and doing things a little different is really neat, because we train every day for endurance. And to express that endurance in other domains of endurance, training, racing, I think is great. And so to be out there with my athletes and staying with them and just seeing that excitement was really great. And we had 3 other people doing the 200. We had people doing the 100. We had people doing the 50, and they all did great. And I can say, like, for the people I know, like for the people doing, so Mark and Scott and Eric, they all finished in the top 100. They all finished in the top 85 overall of the whole 200. And that's kind of cool to me, to think that we got these incredibly strong triathletes, incredibly strong cyclists. And I think Mark was top 60. He was almost on the podium in his age group. And then we had, Scott and Eric, who essentially almost finished together. They might have finished together. It was hours behind them. But to think that those guys came in and just delivered performances that were in the top 100 with the pure cyclists. There's a really proud element to that those guys came in and really delivered on a huge stage. So that was cool to find out. Like, that was super awesome. And I was asking Michael and Daniel how those guys were doing and how everybody was doing, along the way. But that was super cool. So, all right, that's it. I'm going to stop mumbling. So now we're on to Chattanooga. We're on Chattanooga training. And the goal to qualifying for Kona is real. And I'm super motivated for it. I'm super excited about it. And excited to kind of take the fitness to another level. Because, knowing that my 20-minute power is at an all-time high, 322 watts. So that's super cool. Knowing that the running is in a really great spot and knowing the swim is in a good spot. It's like a great launching pad now for a great second half of the season. So thanks for following along. Thanks for listening. And I appreciate you. I appreciate the people that reached out before the race, after the race, and just were saying super nice things. I appreciate all of it. I saw all of it. Can't thank you enough. So have a great week. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.